Remote.
Right, yeah.
Next week. All right. I'd like to call the October 16, 2023 City Council meeting to order. All rise. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Today we have Councilor Miller and Councilor Santiago are excused absent. I'm looking at the agenda. So I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Council President Grayson makes a motion to approve. Any seconds?
Mr. Mayor, I second.
Second by Councilor Jacobs. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tonight, we are at public comments. This is a place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to council regarding any matter not on the agenda and not scheduled for public hearing. Members of the public addressing council are requested to give their name and city of residence. Speakers are to limit their testimony to 5 minutes as we are limited to 30 minutes total for all public comments. We have 2 here anymore. We'll start with Mr. Fidrich. Come on down. You don't need it, but we'll start. Talk when you begin.
Paul Fidrich, Scappoose. Here today to discuss community festivals, focusing specifically on the Adventure Fest. I was on the core planning team for the Centennial event, and the last 3 years I've been the race director for Run with Neil, so I have a pretty good perspective on the events. Firstly, the essence of community festivals is to bring the community together and planning, participating, and attending these events. Secondly, the events serve as catalysts for sustained growth and enthusiasm for our town. The Centennial celebration exemplified this spirit by uniting our community. The event was embraced by nearly everyone with a dedicated core team of volunteers spearheaded by Susie Wilson, Janet Williams, and Mike Sykes. They brought invaluable insights with their involvement from previous festivals, Powwow, and Sauerkraut Festival. During that planning of the event, we had an all-volunteer team. And a few months before the event itself, Treadway Events was brought in by city staff, which was not really what was asked for by the group. It brought about some communication issues and some conflicts because volunteers had a way to do it versus how Treadway wanted to do it. Despite that, though, the Centennial was a great success, and primarily due to the support of the sponsors, the volunteers, and the community at large. But I want to give you some background. After the Centennial, the volunteer committee, which was about 30 people, proposed a scaled down annual event without the involvement of Treadway, something smaller, easier to handle. However, that path was not chosen, and Treadway was once again brought in, and the volunteers were asked to not participate. This decision resulted in the 2022 Adventure Fest, a lackluster experience that failed to capture the essence of our town. This event, despite substantial financial investment nearing 6 figures, suffered from poor attendance and a palpable lack of community spirit and engagement. As President Grayson said this last meeting, the name and logos that had citizens questioning what it was, had mountain bikers and kayaks on it, made little sense. Afterward, the September date was attributed to the poor turnout. 2023 event was moved to August. With an expenditure over $90,000, the outcome remained disappointing, leaving us with yet another underwhelming event devoid of character or purpose. Note on event sponsorships, there are 2 reasons that an organization is going to sponsor an event. One is a cause, like the Centennial, or 2, brand return, which this event did not have. That is why there was no sponsors. It's clear this approach is not yielding desired outcomes, and at close to $100,000, the process has not been fiscally responsible. So let's look at some other towns, for instance. North Plains Garlic Festival has over 4 times the attendance of our event, yet it costs North Plains $5,000. $5,000 versus $90,000. Where did I get that from? The North Plains annual budget. Veronia Salmon Fest, annual budget $3,000. has great success, fosters community enthusiasm, and the artwork that they work on in that stays in the town. So it continues to foster more and more enthusiasm around the salmon and the whole event itself. Neither of these events uses event coordinators. These examples highlight the need for fiscal responsibility and the fact that we're going about it the wrong way. Further, I concur with Councillor Holmes' observations regarding frustrations with vendors and prospective vendors with Treadway events. I've worked with them for 3 years on Run with Neil. While they're nice people, their communication gaps have posed significant obstacles. Many times we try to communicate on issues such as wrong race times on the website, safety concerns with vendor move-in, and never once did they get back to us. Some of these mistakes lingered ongoing for years. We had people showing up at the event because they thought it started at 9. That's what Treadway had on there. And the same mistakes kept repeating. Operationally, there were many holes in the event itself that had our staff trying to assure safety of our runners. We tried in vain to get a meeting with them to address these issues. Finally, getting one scheduled after months of trying, only for them to not show up without warning. They never even showed up. We came to the event, ready to talk to them. They didn't even show up. We had a list this long. I would sum up working with them as super frustrating. I urge the City Council to hit pause and seek input from experienced citizens that have run successful events in the past, and also Jay McKay for amazing work on movies in the park. Their invaluable insights will help create a sustainable and an event that we would be proud of going forward. Just hit the mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Mr. Lager? Come down.
Excuse me, Phil Logger, a resident of Scappoose, not proper, but just outside. I almost said aye when you guys voted to approve the agenda.
Hmm.
Just out of
Have it?
habit. Thank you, Joe. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for this opportunity to address the council this evening. My name is Phil Logger. I've lived here for the better part of 40 years. I'm here as a community member, parent, and an advocate for kids and our community as a whole. Tonight, I am giving public comment on an important choice for the members of the greater Scappoose community. I am here to encourage Scappoose voters to approve Measure 5-296. This investment is generational in both its reach and its scope. By this, I mean that Scappoose is at a crossroads as it relates to deferred investment in our facilities and infrastructure. Town continues to grow, and as such, the development of modern schools, accessible community centers, and public spaces to learn and recreate are desperately needed. Let there be no mistake, this is an investment. I know of no other opportunity when a community the size of ours can directly see the benefit from their tax dollars at work. Our last bond was passed in 2008. It built a modern grade school, an auditorium, a gymnasium at Grant Watts, and classroom additions to other buildings. Before that, the bond that built our current high school was the last major bond passed in this community. That was more than 40 years without any capital improvements to our school campuses. It will truly never be a quote unquote good time to spend hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And I argue with data and confidence that these needs will only continue to grow and the cost will continue to rise. Lastly, there's a call by some in our community to go back to the drawing board, find a cheaper option. It is my personal belief that this is a stalling tactic by the opposition. There was a viable, cheaper option. The past 2 years of work that has been done by the community committees, facility assessment grants, and our district would have pursued these. The work is imminent and the time is now. I appreciate your support of the resolution and bringing forward the MOU that further moves our community in a positive direction for all who enjoy what this community has brought to them and their families.
Thank you. Looks like we might have one more. Sir, were you wanting to speak today? We're at that point right now. If you want to just hand that to Susan real quick, we'll get you up here. Just names, I mean. Just, yeah, go ahead and name, city residence, and I'll get you 5 minutes on the clock when you're ready to go.
My name is Dan Nagley, Scappoose, Oregon. Bringing this to your attention, and I just noticed as I came over here that the call box was not functional. There's a tag out, but the way that I was treated was dismal. I came into the office, the Scappoose Police Department, last Monday to file a complaint, immediately dismissed. Oh, there's a call box outside. Totally unaware that her own equipment wasn't functional. Pushed the button several times, attempting to get a response, nothing. Step into the operations office, address staff there, completely dismissed. In fact, that's not our problem. It's fine. Want to know whose problem it is. I see that there is a tag, that you guys did take care of it in the sense of saying, hey, it doesn't work. But where's the accountability? In addition to that, where's the sensitivity? Somebody comes in to file a complaint. I've been sitting here for 6 months, not saying a damn word. And that's the way I'm treated. How worse are you treating the rest of the members of the community? Thank you.
Dan, can I get your last name?
Vaguely.
Thank you. Yeah, if you would just fill that out, so we'll have just your name and, you know, a few of the things, phone number, information to get back to you on. Get it to her at your convenience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Seeing none, we will be moving on. We're at the consent agenda portion of our meeting. Our consent agenda today is the October 2, 2023 interviews, the October 2, 2023 city council meetings. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Fleur Jacobs makes a motion to approve. Any second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Holmes. Any discussion, question? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to new business. Facilities master plan update. We have City Manager Alexander Rains and Assistant to City Manager Isaac Buttman. Take it away. You down.
So we have put out an RFP for our facilities master plan and we did get proposals back. We have selected a specific consultant to complete this work with us. I did go through interviews with each consultant with a panel of staff. Ultimately, the amount that's actually being charged for the project is within my signing authority, but we did want to just give you a brief update on what we're doing and how we're moving forward. And within this project, we would be then looking at and potentially assessing the middle school site as part of that project. Add anything to that? This was just a quick report, just to let you know, since it is a council goal, that it's moving forward, and we're hoping that it will tentatively be complete by April, end of April 24th. That's the schedule we've discussed. And the appeal period is up tomorrow, tonight. I think it's tomorrow.
What period is up?
The appeal period. So there's always an appeal period when you make an award.
I actually received an email today. I don't believe they're going to appeal.
So we'll be signing a contract this week and moving forward with that.
So to give me some idea, this master plan, facilities master plan, they're gonna go through all the facilities you either lease or own and give a report. And they'll present to, like, hopefully by April,
Yes, the end of
Nope.
April.
end of April is our goal.
And then also at this point too, in speaking with the consultant, there was a suggestion, and we thought this was a great idea, that for a few meetings here and there, it wouldn't be a huge time commitment, that maybe a member of council could join some of those meetings with staff as kind of a, liaison between council and staff, and just to keep tabs on what we're doing, particularly when it comes to looking at the middle school. So I was wondering if one of you might be willing to do that.
Is anybody really excited to, do
It
that?
might be a little dry, but
Yes, if you're not here, you get paid to do it? Is that? I'd be happy to do that. Unless somebody else would like to.
Okay.
I'll start with it.
Alright.
So we look at them, they'll look at everything, whether we've got room, we need updates, and
Be very
if you already
similar.
give them a list of all the properties and they'll start to begin.
It'll be very similar to the parks in terms of the process where they kind of do the initial data gathering, needs assessments. They'll go through some exercises about what do you need, what are you gonna need in the future, projections about, capabilities we might add, staff levels, what happens when we hit 10,000 residents in, 5 or 10 years, because that's a big change for cities about how we do business and what we have to do.
We took them on a tour, during the RFP process. So, I mean, they've made a couple trips out here um, and they had some really good, comparable projects they had worked on and, similar projects in different cities nearby and things like that. So.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Council President Crazen.
I assume that Public Works, Steve specifically, will be working pretty closely with them. Would he give any sort of timeline on like the last time a roof was put on this building or, like when we're looking at, are we looking at upgrades that are going to need to be happening? Is that something that we keep track of separately or what kind of inventory are we making sure goes into the plan?
So typically we'll understand what they're looking for when they do their RFI. So they'll send us a big, long list of information and they could want everything down to when's the last time you put wire in this wall.
Okay.
And we'll produce that, and that's where they start to build the needs assessment.
Mhm.
So they'll look at the full facilities. How old are they? Are they up to code? Are they doing what they need to do? Does the roof need replaced? And then they'll use that as the baseline assessment to say, okay, these are the upgrades you might need. These are alternatives. So it'll be a lot driven by what they ask, and they probably will ask for something.
And I assume that they're pretty knowledgeable about the functions of a city and knowing, what needs to be included in a police department facility and what needs to be included, and like you said, when we hit that threshold of 10,000, what then we would need to add or have an addition.
They have done this with several other cities. So they had some good project examples that they did put in their proposals. So we're confident they know what we need. And also at the end of the day too, they essentially have a lot of information and plan to speak to our various department heads to understand, what their needs are to make sure that when we're talking about this, general plan of what comes next, that they're aware of what we do, what we need, and also the kind of that projection then forward of how many staff we think we might add in that 20-year period, things like that.
Some of that's what those meetings we're talking about are about. So there'll be a very iterative process where we'll be going back and forth with each department head a lot as a group, individually with the consultant to assess the different facilities and the different needs. Because you're right, there are different police departments are different than community development centers, but there is going to be a lot of that built in from what we've seen in the RFP and the proposal. A lot there.
They're not looking at like our water treatment facility, the wells or the wastewater stuff, just the offices.
Correct. Yeah. So those are all in separate master plans.
Those are really difficult to move. Like the wells, you definitely can't move. Things like water treatment facilities, again, very challenging to move. So that would be more like the admin department, development center, kind of these groups that are right now separate. Where should they be in the future? That's another one of those things. Is where in the city should these kind of things be located? Is this the right place for all, or is this the wrong place for you?
They look at any of the water treatment facility up on Keys because part of it's an office, like they're looking at the roof and
No.
the office space.
Will they be potentially looking at, so say the middle school bond doesn't happen and the middle school's not a property that's accessible for all of this, would they be looking at other potential properties for say like a rec center or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of why we started the project where we did, is because as we move to that needs assessment, at the end of that is when we'll have the vote will happen. And so they will, we're supposed to look at the middle school, but then alternatively, I think we would look at, is this the right property? What could you do here? That's part of it, those comparisons and trade-offs, like would a new property or what would it cost to do a new building versus what would it cost to renovate this in any number of ways. And so that's kind of the specialties that we're trying to get by consulting with them, is that they are architects, they do this work in public sector. They have those minds to see things that maybe I don't.
And forward looking to services we may not offer now, but
Could and
okay.
staff
Could
we
or
would
could.
add and things like that.
Great, thank you. On to number 3, Personnel Policy Handbook Update 2023, City Manager Alexander Rains and Assistant City Manager Isaac Putman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So over the last month and a half, we've had 2 work sessions on the handbook. We've gone into pretty deep detail into all of the changes. So I'm gonna kind of do things a little different tonight. I think I'd like to start and see if there's any questions specifically about anything. And then I'm gonna run through just some of the changes that we've made since we last talked, and the major changes we made overall. So that's really clear for the record. Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? So I'm going to go through a couple pages where the big changes are. So page 46 had a new change. We added some language here to align with IRS guidance about part-time versus full-time. We didn't really have any kind of metric to determine that. So every time we had a question, we'd go look for that. Page 60, we added a short addition there for carryover hours for vacation to align with part-time work, part-time leave banks. Page 67, sick leave donation. We have this program in the AFSCME CBA, and it's something that we desired to add for all employees. A lot of people have really robust sick banks. A lot of newer employees don't. It's just kind of a quality of life program to where employees can give each other part of their sick leave banks as long as they maintain the minimum required by law. There's limits on it. On page 72, we added a very short clarification about light duty return to work to make it very, very clear that it's a possible return to work for a OFLA leave. Page 120. This was another change suggested by staff. We have a policy or practice internally where if we take a picture and it's a city picture, we try to have the city logo on it so that the community can determine it's an official city picture. So when you have a police officer with a logo patch or a badge, you don't need a logo. But if we were at Adventure Festival and took a picture, we try to put the logo embedded over the image so that you can tell that that's an official City of Scappoose picture. And if it gets reused, our to the wider world, that's one of our pictures. And the other one would be 134. Added a short section on clothing allowance for non-represented office employees. There's been a lot of confusion about that. One of the things a lot of businesses like to do is keep their brand consistent. A lot of times they do that through visual appearance and clothing. AFSCME members, including the office AFSCME staff, are allowed a short, very small clothing allowance per year to buy things like a polo or workwear for folks who work outdoors. All those staff, they kind of look the same. They all say City of Scappoose. It's very professional. And we've had some requests for a similar program for non-represented. We thought it was a good idea to extend that. That way you have, more people engaging in that program. When somebody walks in, you see somebody that says City of Scappoose in your name. They know it's official.
I mean, we're given, one item too, so I think it makes sense to extend that.
Sure.
Sorry, I should have.
Oh,
Oh my
we are?
gosh, he hasn't been off.
Do you have any city swag, any city
that-
logo
no.
here?
I didn't get swag.
Logo here?
My bad, that
Oh.
program has-
I got offered.
Got off.
I got offered.
Three.
Tyler, he's always sporting his.
You get one thing.
You get a shirt.
You should read your binder.
Binder.
You did the homework.
You know this one
She's
right
Where I
here?
place my order.
This one right here.
Not calling you. Talk to Susan, she'll hook you up.
I'll have to go to Donna Specialties and make my own. Okay.
Please don't.
Let's see, 3 other larger changes were made. We had some discussion with some of our management staff. Under mileage and parking on page 31, we have some departments don't have a work vehicle accessible to them. Some departments do. Some employees prefer to use their personal car. Personal car is used for work purposes. If it's required, you have to reimburse the federal mileage rate. One of the things we don't want to do is to be reimbursing people for a choice that they make. So if there's a car available to staff that they could take that's already paid for, insured by the city, paid for by the city, gas is covered, they choose to use their personal vehicle for work purposes and make the choice to not take the given vehicle, we wanted to only reimburse at 50% of the mileage. So we made that change. This is consistent with the AFSCME contract, something that we're just, again, extending over. On page 11, under holidays and floating holidays, we made some changes to the sergeant positions. These are exempt, so they're salaried, overtime eligible, non-union positions. They do get asked to work holidays a lot. This does mean that also, and that you know, they're not seeing the same kind of holiday time off that we are. A lot of times they'll get called out. They're not getting recognized for that. There's no overtime that they would necessarily generate because they might not be far enough into a work week to generate overtime. There's not an alternative day off. And so we're kind of addressing that unfair balance by extending the holiday work that we have for all of our other employees who are hourly to them. So basically the overtime rate. And for the wastewater and water treatment plant supervisor, very similar. There are 4 hours work a day that has to happen every single day for water and wastewater samples, refilling treatment containers, making sure chemicals are topped up, making sure there's no alarms. Oftentimes they do get scheduled to work again with no recognition of a holiday. So Christmas morning, instead of getting up, they have to go out and work for 4 hours, and there was no balance. So this kind of just goes to striking that balance where if supervisor positions are asked to work, that they do get something in return.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So just to clarify, you're talking like Christmas Day, New Year's Day, Thanksgiving Day.
Any holidays,
Pacific
July
holiday.
4th, potentially Juneteenth if it's in here, Veterans Day, I think is an
Veterans Day,
observed.
Memorial Day.
I think there's about 12
Oh,
holidays.
sheesh. Okay, I could keep going. So you're saying those few hours that they're putting in on those special holidays, will they get to take that amount of hours a different day or just pick a different holiday?
Pick a different day altogether.
Pick a different day altogether.
Yeah, it's
Perfect.
we talked a lot about it, and if you're in Christmas and your half your morning is gone, or you have to
Sure.
leave in the middle, it could really disrupt the holiday. Whereas for me, I get to go home, have the whole day there.
Yeah.
So the disruption is so great to that day that it's almost not really a holiday at all.
Sure.
So we talked with Dave a lot about what have they asked for, what's fair, what do we do for other union groups or other types of groups at the city. And this is very consistent where for like a veteran who's in the police department and has to work Veterans Day, we give them a whole separate day off. So even if they come in for 4 hours, they're going to get a whole nother day off just in recognition of that damage to that day, that damage to that time that they just can't get
We're asking that they use it within a week, within a month.
within the pay
The
period,
pay period, which is a month.
so 1 month. You have to negotiate that with the supervisors to make sure there's no service impacts. And that's very much in line with what we do elsewhere. So moving on, for the record, the big changes we made were around reimbursement rates and how we reimburse for travel, vacation accrual rates and payouts. For the payouts, it's actually a reduction. So there's, you know, certain employees, maybe if they get terminated for fraud, we probably don't want to pay them their vacation pulls out. So we added some things like that to make sure that it keeps our risk low. We added Juneteenth. We changed our bereavement policy to be a little bit more recognizing of the fact that that's a pretty damaging life event. It's a pretty big deal. Before you got 3 days, now you get a little bit more. You can use your sick time for it. It is an OFA protected leave. So we've aligned that with the law. We added longevity pay. All the other units, so the AFSCME union and the Fraternal Order of Police, they both get longevity pay. We did not have that for our non-union positions. This is a really good retention tool. So it kicks in at, I think, 10 years. So about that time, you lose the ability to move up. Maybe you've moved through position ranks and you're kind of where you're going to be for your career. We want to keep those employees here. Those are the folks who are going to keep that institutional memory. They're going to be here a long time. We kind of want to incentivize that, recognize the fact they put in, you know, years of their life, decades of their lives. So this little program is a good way to do that. We added a remote work policy. This is something that we do already do. We do have a number of employees who have the ability to flex their time. We have an employee that's sick. A lot of supervisors will check their emails from home. They'll spend a partial day working from home. Maybe if they're at a conference. This policy was very highly recommended by our lawyers and our legal teams to put in place because it's something we're already doing. Now we should have a policy that, describes how do you do this, what's appropriate, what's not, how do you use your space and your time, making sure that, they're doing the right things while they're at home working. Paid leave Oregon, talked about that major program. There's a couple pages in there about that. It's likely there'll be some changes within the next year or two, I would guess. And then the last one is on page 77. I don't know if I got this consistent throughout the handbook. The state of Oregon is changing how they define family members. It actually is fairly pertinent because it's expanding how the term family member is described. So basically what they've changed the definition to is any individual related by blood or affinity whose close association with a covered individual is the equivalent of a family relationship or the same relations of an employee's domestic partner or spouse. This is very, very, very large. So family member went from somebody who's close blood, like first relations, to it could be a close friend, it could be a second cousin twice removed, it could be your spouse's neighbor who they had a close relationship with. This really changes uses for sick time, bereavement leave, OFLA leave. And we are seeing this spread through all of the legal language in terms of paid leave Oregon, OFLA. And so we are anticipating that this change is going to come and trickle down. To get ahead of that, we want to change our definitions in the handbook to that definition ahead of time so we don't have to come back.
Does that have anything to do with like hiring practices of hiring family members?
It certainly could. I don't know how it's going to affect that, but that is a very good question. I mean, if we're talking about close family friend being somebody you can take 3 weeks of bereavement leave for, or potentially an OFLA leave for, I think that's a fair question on the table. Is that something we need to look at in hiring? I don't have the answer to that question right now. Sure. And that's likely where minimum.
Yes,
Sorry.
Council President Grayson.
For the weeks and weeks that we've spent looking at this handbook, I can only imagine the weeks and weeks and hours and months that you've spent putting into it. So thank you, Isaac. Very thorough. We talked about, really, is this in the scope of council to be looking at it under this close of a microscope, even needing to approve this? What's the thoughts from staff moving forward with this policy handbook?
Yeah, so we did talk about this with legal counsel, and all these policies actually apply to the city manager. So if we were doing this ourselves, you could have a city manager applying policy to themselves. And so I think
We
the
should
best
see it.
thing is something that the council does approve it. And
And, and we certainly discussed, could try to streamline it for you. We could say, hey, these are all legally required and stick it in the consent agenda. It could be in your packet, but we don't have to do this
Yes.
process per se. But at the end of the day, after we kicked that around with Ashley, she just really felt like it was just more appropriate for you all to be approving it. I know this is a little bit dry and probably not the most, I know it's time consuming, but I think there was just some things she pointed out where I felt like it made sense, particularly even when we're talking about things that impact people's pay or benefits or, just some kind of larger policy implications that we thought were more appropriate for you to be involved with. But again, we could always, talk about, on consent agendas or something like that, if that's preferred.
I think from my perspective, going through this, I think it's been a very long time since it's had this kind of a look, any of it. And you can kind of tell by the way it's composed, where that section that's kind of like miscellaneous policies is very, very large. It's kind of all over the place. I think that in the future, we could bring smaller chunks, put them on consent agendas, keep it up to date, quicker, easier without this kind of stuff, especially for legally required changes. I'd prefer it. I mean, this took a huge amount of our time, not just me, but staff, executive team, Alex, legal. I mean, this is a big document. It does take a lot of time to go through.
But I think it speaks volumes to the community, people who are always saying, oh, the city hides things, or city government needs to be more transparent and open, and what are they doing? And this is an example of how we are taking several upon several meetings to scrutinize this work. And we're vocalizing it's going on public record that nothing really is happening behind closed doors. I mean, there was an agenda item earlier tonight that didn't need to come before us, but Alex takes the initiative to present us with something, let us know where it's at. There was no approval for it, but it was something that then goes on the record. It's all out in the open. So I personally think we're in a better place than we were with these updates now, and moving forward, it will go a lot quicker. But thank you for all the time you did take, team, to do that.
Like you said, everything here does involve Ms. Raines. I mean, these are, if there are some items that don't involve her whatsoever, then maybe we don't do those. Or if they're mandated by the state too quicker. Okay. Yes, anybody care to make a motion? Ready to do that?
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion. I move that council adopt Exhibit A as the City of Scappoose Personnel Policy Handbook.
A motion by Councilor Holmes to adopt Schedule A.
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A. More action. Thank you. We have a motion to council adopt Exhibit A as a City of Scappoose Personnel Policy Handbook. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor LaFrenz. Any question, discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And they did give me a key to the city, or key, which is nice. Can't even get one for the school district, get in a gym. But I did get one from the city. So appreciate that. Okay. Oh,
You got a key. I'm like, I got a key. She got a key. They got a,
key to the city.
yeah.
I get a key to the equipment
don't-
room. That's about
You're
it.
the only-
Okay, moving on.
You have to prove
What is,
yourself.
who's here now? Oh, shoot, I didn't know they were here.
Oh, that's weird.
Okay, we are here, number 4, memorandum of understanding between the school district and city regarding the middle school facility. We're joined today by Dr. Tim Porter and Paige Stelling from the school district, as well as board member Phil Lager, still here. And who starts this one? Take it, Alex? Okay.
Right. So Mayor and Council, in your packets this evening, you'll have a memorandum of understanding between the city and school district. I believe that they had just approved this at their last meeting. You'll see that the memorandum is outlining a memorializing agreement between the city and school district to essentially assess the middle school as a potential location for a city hall. Of note, the term is for 5 years. It's non-exclusive, it's non-binding. And ultimately, if we were to ever move forward with using that space, there would be additional agreements and things that would follow. But this is simply, outlining our intent to essentially look into it. As I mentioned with the facilities master plan earlier, we would essentially assess the middle school as a part of that master plan work. And take a look at it to see if, we feel that it's appropriate for our use. And, all that being said, we do have representatives here tonight from the school district if they want to chime in or say anything. But it is for you this evening if you have any questions or want to discuss further.
Do you have any questions?
Mayor.
Councilor Holmes?
So I appreciate the work, both city staff and the school district bringing this together. I think it's been something that we have been talking about and hoping to see for at least the duration of this council. So I think this is a great step forward. So I've worked on a few MOUs in my career, and I like the structure of this. I like to see MOUs that have very clear goals, but I also like to see timelines associated with achieving some of those goals. And so I don't know if that's something that has been discussed. Alex, you said the initial assessment would be completed April 2024. And then I would imagine that the areas of cooperation, the things outlined there would kind of cascade after that. Have we talked about the timing? I mean, 5 years is a really broad window. I think we would want to arrive at some decisions much sooner than that, right? In regards to the middle school. Have we talked potentially about some timelines that could follow to keep things on track and moving along, or?
So at this point, we haven't had specific conversations about additional timelines after the assessment. Obviously we'll have some information on that relatively soon, which is good news. at which point we'll decide, if we're moving forward essentially or not, if it'll suit our needs. But we haven't gotten that far yet. It's certainly something we could, either discuss at a later time or we could start doing that now. Totally open to suggestions on that.
Wait a couple weeks and see how this transpires, and then we could come back and maybe ask for kind of a timeline of what time frame looks like. And then we could maybe develop a timeline goal and
Suppose-
present it back to the school district.
And I suppose another option too would simply be that, knowing that the facilities master plan is about to take off, is we could finish that, essentially assess if it's really something that works for the city. If it doesn't, not really as important, obviously, for conversation. And if it does, then at that point, we can come back to this and say, hey, okay, here are the timeline of how the rest of this is gonna happen. That's an option too.
We're
So
like
we could
3 or
amend,
4.
we could come back and.
Right. We
Date
could,
amend.
we could say, hey, let's move forward. We'll revisit when the facilities master plan is done. If it's something we are continue to be interested in at that point, then we go back, we do the timeline on the remainder.
Yes, Councilperson Grayson.
So Counselor Holmes, are you feeling comfortable about putting it to the side until we knew more from the facilities plan being done? And then I just want to make sure you feel good about that. Okay.
Yep, no, I
And
think.
I'm completely open to whatever you
Yeah.
want.
Because really, we don't know what that will look like until that's done. And then are there specific, like there's different articles of this. Are you looking for like what timeline? I'm just curious in terms of timelines like this. So what would you make a timeline for?
So I would see, some of the things called out in this MOU as kind of toll gates,
Okay.
right? That feed off of one another. So, assessment of, on page 142, assessment of site and building infrastructure for long-term use,
April
April
2024.
2024, exploration of program opportunities, and then negotiations on redevelopment. I would just want to make sure that work commences on those kind of in maybe 6-month periods, just to keep things moving at 6 months to a year to keep things moving along. What I would not want to happen is things to languish for 3 years. We decide something is not workable, and then we're starting from ground zero again. Because I do think there's a lot of value that this will bring to the community. And if this does not become an option, we have to plan B.
Well, and the good thing is, I think, if we go through this process and we don't feel like it's the right thing to do, is the facilities master plan will also be looking at other alternatives. And so, within that conversation, we'll be talking about all of those options.
Yeah, but there could be something outside of just kind of the structural assessment,
Sure.
right? That would make it a no-go. And
Oh, yeah,
just- we
yeah.
need to figure that out and
Mhm.
encounter that. sooner
The
rather
other thing
than
I would
later.
think too, and I suppose it'd be good to chat with them about this, but is if we get into looking at that building and they're like, oh, we didn't put this in our scope, but we really think you should do X, Y, Z. That's something we could, discuss, particularly with our council liaison at that point, and come back and revisit with council, let you know what they're suggesting at that point too.
The consultants.
Correct.
I could see like the exploration of programming opportunities for each site and building area. You would like to start progressing on that and have a time limit on that. Negotiating redevelopment options instead of waiting till the end, have set a timeline of when these things, community outreach, let's set that
Mhm.
timing. Once we get the timing of when could be taking over, and
Yeah, so while the expiration of this agreement would be 5 years, I certainly would not want to wait.
No.
Towards the end of those 5 years for some of these things.
Well, and even just from the perspective of, if bond were to pass and they were to, eventually move out of that building, I think we had talked about a couple years down there, maybe it was 26, I think. Okay, so 26. So you're talking 3 years where we might be moving it. So I don't think there was any intention of it to just sit for 5 years. It was just, okay, if we do it for 5 years, then it will cover us and we don't have to come back and extend it or something like that.
all of 2026 is the move-in goal for if a new school is
Right,
built.
right. So that was kind of, I think, the initial timeline, at least for moving in if we were ever really, going to do that.
Summer.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Yes. Council.
so does it behoove us, given what Counselor Holmes has pointed out, and I see the value in that, does it behoove us to wait to see what happens with the vote? And if the vote moves forward, then come back and bring the MOU and put some timelines together, then vote it in?
I guess my question would be too is, do you want the specific timelines in advance of knowing, that the assessment would show that it would be a space we'd want to use?
Would you be doing the assessment before the vote?
The assessment's going to start taking place probably this week.
Oh, this week. Okay. I
So we would
didn't-
actually commence,
Ah,
but
I see.
the facilities master plan process would commence. It'd be finished in April of 24. So
I feel the amount of work
Okay.
that the school district and us have put into this, it's good time to, I don't think we need to wait necessarily. There is a bond measure on the table, and I think having this done shows something, the school district, has been, marketing or talking about, and this does show, our willingness to look into this opportunity.
Mr. Mayor? oh,
Yes.
sorry, Are you gonna do it? Go ahead. Oh, I had more questions.
then go ahead.
So I think, even before there was the introduction of the bond, I think there was the desire, particularly on the parts of the Parks and Rec Committee, to maybe have an MOU with the school district, even for just like shared field usage or facility usage to facilitate more recreation. If the bond does not pass, is this MOU, could it be restructured to kind of parlay into a discussion that's outside of that specific building and facilities?
Isaac, should he have a microphone? That's, he doesn't go to too many meetings.
Is it on? Okay. Yeah, I think the school district is open to exploring any possibilities with the city. I think share the same city and we don't have a lot of facilities, shared spaces right now. So the school district is open to those conversations for sure. Don't know that it would look exactly like this because this is a non-binding. It's saying that in operating, seeing this is for that facility. So it'd be different than that. We're open to the conversation.
And at the same time, if this does pass, then we still can have that conversation on shared use agreements of the newer facility and the other facilities as well. I mean, fields and gyms and potential to see if there's a
The
relationship.
reality is if the proposed bond passes, there will be more facilities to access.
Yeah.
No, I see this as a good starting point, so I appreciate that. And then just one final question. When we're doing the facilities assessment, can we kind of look at that opportunity as two structures? My understanding, well, my perception of being in the middle school is that there's the old building, right? And then the cafeteria, the STEM building, the Mac Club, like those are newer. So if it's determined that the original building is just not rehabable,
Sure.
can we look at kind of the secondary structures as potential opportunities, kind of as two separate opportunities potentially?
Yeah, and I
And vice versa.
could probably answer this as well, but we've already had some of those discussions about which parts of it uses for the city. We don't have a desire to use much of it. It depends on if the facilities and maintenance program moves over there. There'd be portions of that we would want to use. But for example, the kitchen area and stuff like that, we really wouldn't have use for it if the school was.
Thank you.
And is there any assessments that you have already done on the facilities that we could look at as well? Our group that's look at what assessments have already been done?
Yes, we have the assessments that have been done for the long range planning, but there hasn't been a deep,
Yeah.
just been more of a facilities assessment as for facilities with the district specifically.
Okay. Any more questions? you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Council President Grayson.
I move that council approve the MOU as presented and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
Motion by Council Grayson to approve the MOU as presented and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Any seconds?
Second.
Councilor LaFrenz seconds. Any discussion, question? All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? You vote?
Extension.
Abstention by Councilor Jacobs. Okay. Motion passes. Moving on. Thank you guys for coming tonight. Appreciate it. And we're on to the calendar. What day of the week? Okay, we are on Thursday, October 19th. We have an EDC meeting at noon, followed by Parks and Rec meeting at 6 p.m. Reminder, Saturday, October 21st, Household Hazardous Waste Collection event at the transfer station from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And October 31st, Scappoose Police Halloween Trick or Treat Drive-Through, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. This is it for October. Any updates? City Manager Alex Rains?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I just wanted to quickly report that in the last couple of weeks, I attended both the ICMA and LLC conferences. Those were great. I was also at the city county dinner on October 11th. That went really well also. And then I just want to take a minute to thank Isaac for all his efforts on the personnel policy manual. It took a lot of months before it even got to you, so trust me, we're really glad not to be talking about it anymore. And I just want to thank Susan for everything she does for us, and that's it from me.
Isaac, you got a report? Yeah. Okay, Councilor Jacobs.
Thank you. So Isaac, I just want to congratulate you on the handbook. I've done a similar exercise before in my career, and I know how laborious that work can be, but it is really important work. It is the guiding principle that every employee can go back to and reference. So it's very important. So thank you for doing that. Nice, well done. And that is all.
Thank you. Councilor LaFrenz.
Just that with Halloween coming up, I'd like to encourage everyone to slow down every day. Seeing more and more kind of erratic, dangerous behavior out there. So
Thank you, Councilor Holmes.
Yeah, along the same lines, it's getting dark early, and I know our school zone speeds, I think only extend to us like 4 or so, but we have kids leaving sports much later than that, 5:30, 6, and they will be crossing Highway 30, and we've had some close calls in the past, and so just people be cognizant of all of our community members as it's getting darker. Yeah.
Thank you. Council President Grayson.
Thank you. Last Monday, I gave a public comment at the board meeting of the school district. I read our resolution that we passed in favor of the bond on behalf of council. As Alex mentioned, last Monday, the school board approved the MOU, and because they made that approval, they passed it on to us, and now we've approved it as well. So MOU is in place. Several of you have actually touched on it in terms of traffic safety. There was a pedestrian hit at the crosswalk of the middle school last week. I think some of those drop-off times can get kind of dicey. People are in a rush, but unfortunately, people are so in a rush that they're not paying attention to who's on the road. And then lastly, I feel like this message is so pertinent due to the election. You okay?
Yeah, but you're stealing my thunder.
I'm not going to steal your thunder, I promise. Because you didn't get this email. We had an elementary school principal send an email last week that I just wanted to take some snippets from, and the heading is entitled "Seek First to Understand." And I think that I've been completely guilty of this as well. You show up, you're coming in with your assumptions, you're ready to sort of attack and fight, but you don't have the full story all the time. And I think that people who either make public comments or are just out in the public engaging in conversation with each other, they don't always seek first to understand.
And so what she's getting at is that it's so easy in the moment of anger and fear and angst, and we're not really truly representing who we are to one another. And just to take a moment in our communications to first seek to understand, ask a question. And I think there's so many people that come with blanket statements and they haven't taken the time to really get the information first, and ask a question. And again, I've totally been guilty of this, but I think it's just a phrase that I've really repeated myself lately in the last week. Just seek first to understand. I think probably among staff that's important too, and amongst each other. So, well, I've got.
Thank you. Kind of echo that with the election is pertinent because it's school. Educate yourself. Educate yourself on the topics. Read up and really look into it. I got a couple here. Jeanette had brought up October 9th was Indigenous Peoples Day and was interested if we're interested in looking at a proclamation, probably within the next month, but recognizing October 9th. So if you guys are interested, I will send that out to you guys to review. Thank you. I did attend the childcare leadership meeting today on Zoom. Again, we're still a childcare desert and they're working hard to try to gather people. Clatsop has done a really good job on, they have a big hospital that's really helping fund it with grants and whatnot. So we're really trying to develop a Columbia County childcare group together and look at that. So I'm hoping with working with Council President Greisen to maybe look at some kind of goals or something that we can do to possibly help that along.
He had briefly mentioned because these meetings are taking up both of our time on a monthly basis and we're just doing it. We're not a liaison to it, that potentially with goal setting, there might be a liaison assigned to the county childcare consortium.
Yeah.
Because
they're going to hire, the CET is kind of looking at, Paul Vogel's kind of overseeing it. They'll be getting some grant money and they'll be hiring someone to organize and run. And it might be a good group, especially with schools has representation. If we have ability to look at the mid-school, there might be opportunities there as well. The Clatsop County one is going to send me their strategic plan and show what they've done for their kind of goal setting. The hotel feasibility study has gone out to developers. Paul Vogel, CET, they would be interested if we're interested in listening to them come in because there was a really good report put together and it has gone out to Choice Hotels in Wyndham just recently. And they're talking about different properties, potential. So that just went out within the last week. And so I thought maybe if we do have some time, maybe we can get them in to just explain what they've been doing and what the possible next steps are. And you all have received a letter today from the Columbia County Fire Fence Board. And I'm interested in to kind of seek your feeling of where we could go from here. One is you could authorize me to write a letter in response, or we could have Ashley, who is online, if you have any questions. And Alex, we could kind of get together and come back with a response and bring it to a board meeting and we can all review and make a decision together. If that's something you guys are interested in responding to this. Yes.
Undoubtedly, there needs to be a response from us. Again, seek first to understand there's a lot of accusations coming at us as a council and not the one member of council. And so I'm in favor of enlisting Ashley's support to write a response, whether you're a part of that with her, all good. Yeah.
Okay, and so then she will probably ask, what part of the letter do we want to address, talk about? So if you have any information you want to give to her, you can do it now or in emails. Do we respond to the urban renewal issues that they bring up, whether or not this is something they've sent out to all communities within our district that have urban renewals, or is it just us? So if there's anything we need to focus on or information, is there anything you want to add, Ashley, that you would be interested?
Nope, you pretty much covered it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I personally want to specifically address the lawsuit and who has who has filed that lawsuit
Okay.
and who hasn't filed that lawsuit. Clarify
Okay,
that.
so it's a statement that the lawsuit was not filed on behalf of or authorized by the city council or any member of the Scappoose city government.
Nor was it even known about due to the representatives that attended that meeting and were sent away.
Okay.
And I do like to maybe review the role of our liaison, and that, you know, in this aspect, they're there to gather information and bring it back to council for us. We know they're not part of their advisory board or committee. It is a representative from our council to gather information that and bring back to us that they find pertinent. Or if we
Okay,
have questions for them, we could task them with asking questions or finding out information for us. Or if they ask him questions, he can bring back, or the liaison can bring back questions for the council.
So Mayor, so I understand, do we want to put that in the letter in our response communication, or do we want to address that as a city council?
Does anybody have any thoughts?
I personally, sorry, Mr.
I'm
Mayor.
good.
I personally feel that the previous mayor at the time assigned or even created this liaison role because there was a moment in our community where there was a need to be understanding the information that was being presented in this group. I don't know personally if that role has exhausted itself because this entity, this special district has sort of resolved what it had been working on. If this is not a goal for council moving forward in January, then I don't see the need. Obviously our liaison roles fluctuate. We just talked about potentially doing a new one. We've removed people off other groups because it wasn't really important for them to attend those meetings, weren't getting information out of it. This could naturally be one of those types of things where it just sort of dissipates, not because of the specific liaison person, but because those goals would be sort of teetering out and no longer needed by council.
Okay, so you're saying that's sort of a separate issue. So, yeah, what I kind of hear us talking about is doing a number of things. So first of all, responding to the letter specifically regarding the city's lack of a role or knowledge of the lawsuit. So clarifying that to all parties. Also, I think it would help to clarify the role of liaison internally. For instance, what exactly purpose do they serve? Who are they representing when they're acting in the liaison role? And any guidance that the council has previously issued regarding that. I think that would be great. And then what I hear you saying is evaluating whether or not it is necessary to keep that liaison position given the change in circumstances.
And not the circumstances of the liaison, but the goal of the council in needing to
Right.
be informed of those meetings.
Okay.
We will do our liaison assignments, at goal setting in February. And so from now until then, we are going to look at them all. And do we need them as it changed at all? Is there other groups that we might need to have representation with? It says the lawsuit on behalf of the city council 911 liaison. That's my part. It wasn't city council 911 liaison that filed the lawsuit.
It was him as an individual and represented as himself.
Right. So for the communication back to the Fire Defense Board, would you like me to draft something on the city council's behalf and have it come back to the city council for approval before it go out? Or is it something that you just want me to respond to regarding, the legal position of the city regarding that lawsuit?
I think I would like to see it and review it before it goes out. And if I could, there's one other piece of this letter that I find particularly troublesome and I think is worth responding to. It says,
If one of our staff, career, or volunteer is hurt, if a community member dies because of a failure of the communication system, we will deflect any criticism, complaint, and lawsuit of our response to the city of Scappoose. However, we address that, that is not an acceptable option or position for them to take.
Yeah. Okay.
My understanding, this communication system, we've been working on it for years, several years. It's been an issue, correct?
Okay, I'll definitely make sure that.
Amara.
I thought she was teasing this.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor.
it's my perspective that we really kind of just point at the accusations of the lawsuit and not really address what they're talking about in urban renewal. I mean, that's a separate letter, a separate issue that was just sort of thrown in, I feel like.
Okay.
I'd like to just stick to the task at hand, and it has to do with the lawsuit and the accusations of us being held accountable for anything that might result from that.
Okay. I think we're good. Is anything else? I mean, I guess that was my comment, so it's on me. Thank you, Ashley, for joining us tonight. That is all I have for tonight. So meeting adjourned.